Hello, welcome to Truth Not Tradition Online Bible Study for March 2nd, 2016. I'm Tony Samario, joined as always by my father, Brother Sal, whose site, BroSal.org, and BroSal on YouTube will host this show. And so thanks, Dad. And we're going through Revelation now. We did last year in 2015. Now we're going through it with some new insight in 2016. And if you haven't listened to last week's show, I'd encourage it, because I sort of threw some insight out there from my own point of view. I believe is insight that this seven-headed leopard beast has got to be that's got to be God's view ultimately of the two southern tribes, Judah, Benjamin, and Levite, the priests. And that does go all the way back, as Brother Dave pointed out. If it was Dave I think one of the Daves pointed out in a comment in the last couple of weeks, how it was Moses' brother Aaron who was, building the golden calf. Well, what's taken Moses so long? I don't know, but we don't have any protection. So let's build a golden calf till he gets back down here and tells us what God wants us to do. I mean, that's how misunderstood it's always been, and how misunderstood from the very heart, from the very, the closest people to it. Remember what Jesus told the disciples who'd been with him on the night he was going to be killed. Just show us the Father and that'll be enough for us. And he said, how can you say that to me after all we've been through? Show us the Father. What are you, who am I talking to? You guys still don't believe. So that's our natural condition. Let's just face it. The ones that walk with God can't quite keep it. So there must be something to all that, and in the metaphysical explanation, I seek to, to reconcile that. But in interpreting Revelation in the Bible study, I'm more convinced this week than last that the seven-headed leopard beast must be the state, what we would call the state of Israel today, the two tribes, the ones that keep the Temple Mount, the ones that occupy Jerusalem, that were meant to since the days of David and before even David, since they were led out of the wilderness and led to the promised land through Aaron. Now, ever since that time, they've disobeyed God. So it goes back to the beast that was, the temple, and is not, because in John's day the temple's been destroyed and there is no more state of Israel. And again, the whole world wonders after this beast. Well, boy, if it's the Jews, that makes sense out of something, because the whole world wonders after him. Not some spirit that no one sees, but an entity that everyone sees and wonders about and says, who can make war with these guys? We'll worship the dragon because, look, that's what the scripture's saying to me. The dragon's behind this, giving them their throne. And I thought of something this week when I was re-looking at it. It's kind of like the temptation of Jesus, right? He was brought, here's the King of Kings, the King of the Jews. And he's brought to the mountain and shown all the kingdoms and said, just bow down to me and I'll give them to you. See, because so that's what this beast is to me. The Jews did that. They bowed down to the dragon, gave him, traded their inheritance from God for all the kingdoms of the world. That's what this story is really about. And so these two beasts that we're dealing with are his two, the two sticks that were separated. The two southern tribes and the northern tribes. The northern tribes are the woman. The southern tribes are this seven-headed beast. And that's why this false prophet beast that rises out of the land. See, there's nothing about who is and who was. And no, this is something that rises up out of the land that looks like a lamb, but gets its voice from the dragon and does all the operates on behalf of this seven-headed leopard beast and exercises its power on behalf of it and builds an image of it and causes the world to worship it. So what could be so intertwined, right? The Pope is causing us to worship an image of what exactly as the false prophet? For those that believe that that's the fulfillment of this. The Pope now comes out of the, how's that connected to this beast that was? Anyway, the people do make a connection. I don't want to have to go through the alternative arguments. I'll let you weigh mine against theirs, see what you think. So in moving forward to today in this, what I feel is the most correct interpretation I can give to it, I want to just look back for a minute, catch us up, because I know this is confusing. This last couple of weeks, throwing a lot out there. So I say if you go back and think about where we are from chapter 14, where the Lamb is stood on Mount Zion with the 144,000. And they sing this new song. They're introduced now as these very special people who sing a song that no one knows but them, that they were the ones that were chosen out of the earth. They're celibate. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These are the ones Jesus chose as his first fruits to God. Here's what men are capable of following me. That's why to think that that's every believer, no way. Or any of us qualify for that. That's got to be a very, very select group of people that over the whole course of this history of following the Lamb. I say that this is the apostles are in there and all these kind of people. So I don't know how that jibes with them being marked at this end. I mean, it doesn't say anything except don't harm anything until we've marked the servants, each from the tribes. It doesn't say anything else. How do we know where they are, when, where they come from? Have they been brought back to be marked? They're just anybody in the earth right now that happens to be following the Lamb wherever he goes and have not defiled themselves with women. Does that mean celibate? Anyway, these are the questions I have, and I'm just wanting to use it at this point to point out where we're at in this story. We've just been introduced to these people, and verse 6 of chapter 14, and I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach to those who dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, serve God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. See, this is what I think is important for setting all this timing now. The hour of his judgment, that's where we're at. Is that the thing we call wrath of God? I think so. That's why I say it's, if not that, this is even at the end of what we call the wrath of God, which I believe isn't 7 years long, it's 42 months long that people are subjected to this wrath that breaks out. And this judgment itself that we read last week, the condemnation that we're going to find out in chapter 17, what we're going to see explained. But in the 16th chapter is the angels pouring out these bowls from the sores that break out on everybody that took the mark. Sea turns to blood, rivers turn, all the water turns to blood. And angels have to confirm, yep, it's, they've earned this. Give them blood to drink. See, who is that? All the world? See, I don't think so, but even if it is, then where are we here? I say, where are we? You can see by the rest of the bowls, we're right up against it. The sun scorches people after that, right? Then the fifth bowl, the kingdom of this beast is darkened, which I say is Jerusalem. They gnaw their tongues over this. Because remember, they're the ones being warned. Jesus is Messiah. Judgment's on you. Why? What is this judgment? The hour of his judgment. See, Christians have always, it's on sin. It's on sin. Then how come that's not what's mentioned? We haven't encountered that now. Sorry, guys. 14 chapters of Revelation. Where does it say all the non-believers, here's what's facing them? Just believe, you guys, if you want to escape all this. If you believe in Jesus, you will have everlasting life. But if not, God's judgment on sin. No, it hasn't been about that at all. So here we are now. The hour of his judgment has come. I say that why these beasts are talking about the Jews and the 10 tribes. Those are the people he's judging finally. He gave them all the rope that he could give them. Once they choose a different Messiah, or once that final offer of the Messiah. Because as I say, I'm becoming more and more reluctant to insist that they must choose a false Messiah. The way Sheikh Imran Hossein sees it, from the Quranic interpretation, is that the false Messiah declares himself, I am the Messiah. And our own scriptures seem to indicate that sort. He breaks the covenant and stops the daily sacrifice and declares himself God. He blasphemes the name of God. So it's quite possible that this person rises up the Jews have trusted at the time when the witnesses are saying, don't trust him, Jesus is your Messiah. And they're laughing, going, are you kidding? This guy's letting us rebuild our temple. This guy's making peace with us. This guy's guaranteeing our security with our Arab neighbors. This guy's ready to go kill Iran for us. And you're telling us don't trust him? Jesus is returning? Jesus is judging us? You're out of your minds. See, that makes sense. And the group that does see these dead that have risen that go with Jesus, these Jews over there, are going to be persecuted because they're trying to stop this temple worship. And the state of Israel is all for it. Now, see, this is what God is judging, in my view. Not the world for sinning. He already pointed that out through Paul in Romans. There's a law written in your hearts. That's what God's judging, because the whole world everyone's held accountable for the fact that God is the sovereign. God is the creator, that you can't escape God no matter where you go or what ideas you hide behind. You're confronted by the reality of being the subordinate to something. And so, that's ultimately why the law comes down to being written on your heart. Do you live in the love of God as the spiritual reality that exists, whatever you call it, that's how I see the 7 spirits of God anyway, going out and infecting the world with people that follow God in their heart. Because the way I read the scripture, Christianity and what Jesus did was choose out these few from the world to follow him. And Paul pointed out what a crazy story it was, that unless you were chosen, you couldn't possibly believe it. Okay, so that's why I'm just trying to reinforce this argument that it's this judgment that's come. Now, what I want to question quickly here in the end of chapter 14, because now you get this introduction through these angels. First, serve God because his judgment's come. Then Babylon's fallen, the great cities which made the nations drunk. So if I'm right, that has to be Jerusalem. It's announcing the fall, finally, of this, what God's calling Babylon, this false expression of his worship, of worshiping him through his temple properly. Then the third angel says, if any man worships this beast, this Jerusalem, and gives... See, that's why it makes sense to me. You've been warned, people. God's the sovereign. Jesus is the Messiah. This state of Israel claiming something is false. And if you take their mark and become part of them, then you're destined to drink of this cup of God's wrath. So that shows you that this mark is sort of pre-God's wrath. At least the warning certainly is. And right after that, in this broader vision, he looks, and here comes the Son of Man, and the angels with the sickle, and the sickle, the earth is ready to harvest. What does that mean? The warnings are finished. It's all on the table again. Who are you going with? Jesus is the Messiah. People are getting killed for it now. It's time to make your decision, is the way I see it. So the earth is harvested. Now is this Armageddon? Verse 20 of the 14th chapter. And the winepress was trodden until the juice came out, reached even unto the horses' bridles. Right? Well, I was always, that's traditionally, that's Armageddon, right? Now, if it is, when is that? And I've put together a timeline, a chronology, the best that I can see of all the events as we identify them of the tribulation and how they fit into a 7-year time span that fits a plausible explanation like I'm trying to give it. So I'm going to save that for the end because I want to add more of today's discussion into chapter 17 and hopefully 18 into that chronology. But I want to point out here that going all the way back to 14, chapter 14 gives us a vision of the 144,000 that are quite a rare breed. And then these sort of whoa angel warnings, right? Serve God, his judgments come. Second angel followed him, which I guess would mean in time perhaps. Babylon's fallen. Then the third angel followed them, saying that if any man worships this beast. And again, I see that all pointed at Israel and his children ultimately that are part of this movement of the state of Israel, the Zionistic project to reestablish Israel for God and for God's people. That's got to be this beast, in my view. Okay, so now chapter 15, you get the sign of the 7 last plagues, and no one was allowed to go in and again, the Song of Moses, the Lamb, all these, here we are all the way up into the 15th, coming to the condemnation is what I'm seeing is, the 16th chapter, pouring out these bowls. This is the vision of the actual condemnation. Here's how it's going to go down. You people that finally, after all the warnings, after all the miracles, after whatever these 2 witnesses have done, after whatever's gone on over there, you're still going to take that mark. You're still going to worship that beast. Sores break out on you. And that's got to be the final sign. What are the people going to be saying? Wait, when you take that mark, you're going to break out in sores. And that's right at the end. There's nothing you can do at that point, I imagine those people won't care to listen. By then, they can't wait to kill off all these people that won't shut up about Jesus coming again and Jesus being the Messiah. That's why the 2 witnesses, everything's so celebrated. They're the ones that are standing in the way of the temple being rebuilt. This is the way I'm starting to see it. So I'll get to that at the end. But so for now, what I want to, bring us back into the conversation is with the timing of this all. The judgment has come. It says in the 7th verse there, the angel, serve God and give him glory, for the hour of his judgment has come. So worship him who made heaven and earth, not believe in Jesus. Funny enough, at this late stage of the game, believe in him who made heaven and earth. And so this is the moment that's, I say, being described now through the the 15th chapter expresses the context of it. Great and marvelous are thy works, right? They're these people that are singing about the actual Messiah that has the authority and the wherewithal, I suppose, to conclude this whole thing, to finally put an end to all this, synagogue of Satan, if you will, this misrepresentation of God's word that's gone on since they came out of Egypt. That's what all the praise is about, and why it's the servant of Moses and the Lamb, the fact that they were promised from the beginning through Moses, their Redeemer, who told them, slaughter the lamb and put the blood on the doorposts, and God will see your faith and honor that. So not a word about Jesus, but Moses and Lamb. So come on, that's got to be on purpose. Then the temple of the tabernacle of the testimony in heaven. Again, all these Jewish relevant symbols. And anyway, so that's where the no man could go in. And then the 16th chapter, I heard a voice saying to the seven angels, go your ways and pour out the seven bowls of the wrath of God upon the earth. Right? And this is the ones I'm talking about with the sores. The first one's the sores, and then the blood, and blood of the ocean. Every soul in the ocean dies. I mean, you won't be able to miss this, will you, if you're still here? We have to talk about, when is this? That's what I want to talk about at the end. What is our timing here? And then the sun will scorch men, and then the kingdom of the beast will be darkened, which I'm going to argue will be Jerusalem. And then the sixth angel, the river Euphrates, dries up to make way for the kings of the east. And I saw three unclean spirits. Verse 13 of chapter 16, I saw three unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the wild beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. They're the spirits of devils who work miracles, which go forth to the kings of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day. And behold, I come as a thief. What does that all mean? See, it's all, and now that's all following this sixth bowl before the seventh bowl. So I say that, it's very hard to place that timing. He gathered them, because he gives the warning, blessed is he who watches and keeps his garments, lest he must walk naked and show his shame. That shows being aware of this, that you weren't just had the wool pulled over your eyes. Because as I've talked about before, what that refers to is, in those times, a Roman soldier who fell asleep on duty, they took his clothes, so he had to walk home naked, show his shame for falling asleep on duty. That's what that refers to. Behold, I come as a thief. Stay awake. Stay on duty. Your duty is to know this is coming. To know there's a time when this is all going to end, and the false Messiah is going to make his move, and the true Messiah. And you're supposed to know there's an end times. That's why the disciples have, tell us, Lord. Everybody said, hey, what's the sign of this? What's the sign of your coming? What's the sign? Even the Quran. They asked the Prophet Muhammad, what's the sign? And he's got the 10 signs. That's why I encourage people, listen to Sheikh Imran Hussein. I disagree with the Sheikh on several points, or there's several points of contention where I don't agree with his conclusion, but he's got the only other eschatological understanding I've ever found in my life since Dr. Gene Scott and my father, in between, then and now. So, it's worth listening to, because is it just a coincidence that the prophet told them also that there would be 10 signs? And guess what the most important one is? The return of Jesus. Ooh, doesn't that pique your attention? It piques mine. So anyway, all these signs to me give me an idea of, when this is happening now. And behold, I come as a thief. Of course, that's to the Jews. Paul points out, you, my brethren, you're not of the darkness. That day, isn't this that day that we're talking about? The hour of his judgment has come that we just read, that the angel's pronouncing. Isn't that day Paul's warning about? That day should overtake you. So here we are. It's not overtaking me. And those that are paying attention, it's not overtaking Sheikh Imran Hussein. And those that are listening to him, we're all anticipating this and sort of just moving with the story as history reveals our errors in interpretation or expectation. And I say that's the place to be. Keep your mind open and, keep anticipating that knowledge will increase so that so your watch can get more accurate as we keep watching. So I'm saying that all of this is showing that this moment that if we're going to call this wine press moment, I'm still asking that question, is that Armageddon? Right? Or is that referring to something else? It sounds like from the 6th verse of the 14th chapter, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven having the everlasting gospel. From there to the end of what we call the 14th chapter is all this one thought, which is broadened. Then the 15th chapter opens with bringing us into another sort of cameo thought. And I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues. For him then in them is fulfilled the wrath of God. So this starts bringing us now into the detailed picture, which chapter 16 then details. First bowl is going to do this, second bowl is going to do that. And in between the 6th and 7th bowls, we have these spirits that are called devils coming out of the mouth of these dragon, 7-headed leopard beast, and false prophet. How do we interpret that out of the mouth? Something they're speaking forth, I imagine. That's all a unified speech. It's the dragon speech coming forth out of the mouth of the state of Israel, whose false prophet is also confirming it. And they're working miracles. Fire being called down from heaven, sort of thing. Convincing world leaders of certain things they must do and commit to get into this battle. I mean, how do you read it? That's how I'm reading it. Okay, so that's going on after these waters are dried up. And that's going on now, we're going to say, after the sea is turned to blood and every living soul has died. And right? This is what's always been hard for me to reconcile. What sort of mindset could be going on at the time that all the water that you drink is blood and you're dying from it? The famine and death caused by the sea being dead, all the water being blood, the sun scorching people. Who's joining the army? Who's staying in line? I mean, how do you organize a war when the sun is scorching your men? When you say we're going to march over here and do this and take this city, see, that's what I don't understand. Does it just mean convincing world leaders to push buttons and send missiles now? But where's all the slaughter? Where are all the people? See, and so I'm still a little confused as to when does Armageddon happen? Is Armageddon, up front of all the plagues? Armageddon's a war that happens, but it's not such a devastating war as people think. It's just devastating over there. They all get together and kill each other like mad. over there, and perhaps a nuclear weapon is exploded. Perhaps it's blamed on Iran. And while the plagues of the earth are happening during the second 3.5 years, I mean, it's hard to get a grip on the chronology. That's why I'm going to go over what I imagine it might be, but I want to stay open, and I want people to think about this, because this is what I find the difficult part in this so far. It seems pretty clear, if we're going to take it the way it's written, that because then the seventh angel, after this description of, you go through quite clearly, we're told that with these last 7 plagues, the wrath of God is fulfilled. And here they are now. We're being told, here it comes. Bowl 1, sores. Bowl 2, dead ocean. Bowl 3, blood to drink. Bowl 4, sun scorching you to death. Bowl 5, darkness so dark in the beast kingdom that people gnaw their tongues to death. Or gnaw their tongues. Bowl 6, the river Euphrates dries up to make way for the king of the east. So, to be prepared. So that means, I suppose, the king of the east is getting his army ready to come, is what I'm thinking. We're right at the edge of war, is what it's in. In other words, is all this happening to the king of the east too? Who's he got to fight if everybody's drinking blood? See, this is the part I'm confused about. So these devils go out to the kings of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty, and he gathered them together in a place which in the Hebrew is called Armageddon. Then the seventh angel poured out his bowl, and there came a great voice from the temple, from the throne, saying, "It is done." There were voices, thunders, and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, the like of which has never happened. So we know we're not there yet. And this great earthquake seems to me to bring us back to the sixth seal. Every island fled away. Mountains could not be found. See, we're at that point. Everybody's hiding in the rocks now. This is the end. So this is after Armageddon, isn't it? He gathers them together to a place that is called Armageddon for this, the battle of that great day of God Almighty. Then the seventh angel poured out his bowl, and there came a great voice saying, "It is done." And there were voices and thunders and lightnings and a great earthquake, and the great city was divided. Every island and mountain fled. I mean, does that sound like nuclear weapons to you? It doesn't to me. Neither does the sea turning to blood, or the springs of water turning to blood, or the sun scorching people. That all sounds, again, natural disasters, like we're destined to be hit by something. And is the world going to fight over it before or after we're hit by it? Is the question. When is this fight? This is the part I think is, it's done when the seventh bowl. It's the end of the wrath. Armageddon has just been announced behind us. This can't be in the next, after the millennium, the way I see it. I mean, it's coming out of the mouth of these dragon, false prophet, beast that we've been introduced to. That's the whole thought since back in chapter 12 and 13, at least. Chapter 13, 14, 15. Give us this description. 16 shows us how the wrath will be and, the devastating effects of it. I'm trying to incorporate in a chronology Armageddon, which seems in the way it's laid out to happen. It's almost the last thing, but not quite the last thing. The great earthquake seems to be the last thing. And the rocks falling on everybody hide us from him who sits on the throne. right? I keep asking, how can that happen before the Great War? Who's going off to a Great War? What communications are you using to communicate for this Great War? So anyway, I still believe that's something I would like to hear people discuss what your thoughts are on that. I'm going to give you my breakdown chronologically of it at the end of how I think it appears to me at the moment most feasible, but I'm still open because, as you can tell, I don't have an answer for how Armageddon can be before these, it can be after these events. Unless the events are more symbolical than, right? Unless when it says the whole sea, it means the Mediterranean Sea, right? The rivers, the water source over there in Jerusalem and around Syria, around that area is going to be turned to blood. That throws a little different light on it than if we start, than if you take it literally. I'm just sorry, I'm looking for it again. His bowl upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. All I can imagine is if the word the sea can refer to their local, what they call the sea, in the same way I say the town. When I talk about going to Puerto Vallarta from where I live, I'm going to town. We went to town. Unless it can be generalized that way, which I say is we got to keep it open. It makes a little more sense to me. Then these things could happen as signs before the Great War. I don't see how everything in the whole sea can be dead and such, and anyone care about going to war in the Middle East, no matter what miracles come out of the mouth of the false prophet. Right? See, there has to be enough reason the way it's painted, that it takes a miracle somehow to go get who are we talking about? The kings of the world: France, Germany, America, England, Russia, China, to come to this war, right? Is the way I'm seeing it. To go commit to this war, to think that they can win, that something's on their side. That's how I'm imagining these miracles. Being told, look, you got to do this. I don't know, but that's the impression I get reading. For they are the spirits of devils who work miracles, which go forth to the kings of the whole world. See, that's not so ambiguous. Kings of the whole world, to gather them to that battle of the great day of God Almighty. And he gathered them together in a place which in the Hebrew tongue is called Armageddon. So now, again, and is that battle of the kings of the whole world the same thing that's the winepress was trodden until the juice came out to the horses' bridles? Is that the same moment? I say that's probably real likely, since that end of the 14th chapter has this procession of these angels that go from the pronouncing that the hour of judgment's come, that okay, now Babylon's fallen, which to me is Jerusalem. The judgment's come. This is it. Now, boom, it's fallen, and now you take the mark of the beast, and you're going to be part of this wrath. You're going to drink the cup of this wrath, and your smoke of your torment will never live. And so now blessed are those who die in the Lord from here on out. And then you have this vision of the Son of Man coming on a cloud with an angel with a sickle and harvesting the earth. So that would seem to all be a vision of this very end that takes you from the warning, the destruction of Jerusalem, the forcing on them of taking the mark, the martyrdom of those then. Blessed are those that get through it from here on out. And then the harvesting. So if Armageddon is the last thing that happens before this great earthquake, you would think that that's the moment being described. And the earthquake would seem to be, to me, that's the sickle. That, it's the great earthquake. It's every mountain and ocean, island fleeing from its place. The sky rolling up like a scroll and the stars falling like figs, and that description, that sounds like the sickle going in from that standpoint of a complete violation of the dimension, if you will, from a symbolical perspective of an angel sticking their sickle into the earth. Sounds quite intrusive. It sounds like an extinction event kind of thing, like most of the stuff described in Revelation, except for this war, Armageddon. So I'm saying the war must happen right up against this final earthquake that happens, which must, I suppose, happen after the war, because it wouldn't make much sense if it happened before the war, if all the islands fled from their place. All right, so I want to move on now to chapter 17, which opens, "Then came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 bowls, and talked with me, saying, Come, I'll show you the condemnation of the great harlot who sits upon many waters." Now, see, I want to argue for traditional Christian, against the traditional Christian view that this isn't afterward. I'll show you the condemnation. No, this chapter 16 was the condemnation. This is what the condemnation looked like. Now he says, I'll show you the condemnation of the great harlot. See, here's the representation of what that's happening to, is the way I see it, who sits upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her adultery. Right? Sounds like God, or the angel, pointing out that the inhabitants of the earth they've been made drunk by the wine. Sounds like she's being held responsible here for something. "So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting." So this is the vision of this representation that's had this condemnation brought down on it. "And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet wild beast, inscribed with many words of blasphemy, and having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. And she had a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her adultery on earth. And upon her forehead was a name written that not all could understand: Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great astonishment. And the angel said to me, Why do you wonder? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the wild beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns." So first, why is John astonished? I mean, if you look at it from the perspective of, perhaps he realizes he's describing God's people, that this, upon her forehead was a name written that not all could understand: Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints. Remember who he's talking about now, God's people, the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus, which were his brethren. See, who killed them? Who's drunk with their blood? Right? Probably the Jews of the time that increased their power by killing and persecuting this new way, these Christians, these people that were claiming Jesus was the Messiah, that were becoming a sect. Right? Anyway, that fits. So the angel says, why do you wonder? I'll tell you the mystery of the woman and the wild beast that carries her, which is the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The wild beast that you saw was and is not, and is ready to come up from the bottomless pit and go to be destroyed. And those who dwell on earth, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, shall wonder when they behold the beast that was and is not, and now whose end has come. So see, this is to me a big clue, Dad. The beast, not one head that was, not one horn that was, the beast that was and is not and is going to come up to be destroyed. You know, how many people fit that? How many entities fit that? But the Jews do. The 2 tribes that were made the scepter holder and the priests, they fit that. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but receive authority as kings for 1 hour with the beast. See, because they're going to get authority with the state of Israel. That's what I'm seeing. That's where their allegiance is going to be. These are of one accord, and they shall give their strength and authority to the beast. They will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Then he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are many, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns and the wild beast which you saw shall hate the harlot, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to do his will, and to be of one accord, and give their kingdom to the wild beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. Now, to me, this all demonstrates what we've been talking about and looking for a long time in the fall of Jerusalem to the Muslims, who know they're going to take Jerusalem. That's all something both sides are looking for, and this is what it's talking about. The 10 horns, which we know are Muslim kings from Daniel, that come out of the feet at the time of these kings. The God of heaven will set up a kingdom that'll never be destroyed. So the 10-toed kingdom out of Daniel has clearly been demonstrated as Islamic kings that will arise. And so I believe that that's where we have to look for the clue here. These are 10 Islamic kings that give their power to this beast. Boy, that sure makes sense now with the way we've got all these client states of Israel, doesn't it? And these new people that are going to rise up, they're going to have to fall in to this new idea that Israel's proposing. Or, you know, I'm reluctant to place the false Messiah yet. For those that are seeing it that way, I see it that way too, but I don't have the words in the scripture to justify it yet, right? There's nothing here that tells me that some false Messiah is going to do this, but 10 kings are going to make a deal with this beast. This beast has a false prophet that's the one that's causing the whole world to worship it. So it's pretty easy to make the connection there, that this false prophet has got to be, to me, the leader of the caliph, and who either is declared by the state of Israel to be their Messiah or declares himself to be their Messiah. And that admixture of Islam and Israel, to me, is what's sort of being explained in this, and in the 8th king that is even of the 7th that we talked about last week. So here it makes sense to me that what we're talking about again is the beast being the state of Israel, and the harlot that's riding her is the 10 northern tribes, which can be construed as almost anybody, but I have to think that that's to be construed as the United States, Britain, France, Western Europe alliance. That's who that harlot is on behalf of, righting Jerusalem, righting this state of Israel, at least for the last 100 years, right? The reestablishment of that land, the stealing of all the oil from those Arabs that's resulted in this whore that is so rich and decked out in pearls and drunken on the blood of the saints and martyrs. I don't know. It's, that brings in Roman Catholic Church, Spanish Inquisition, all that kind of stuff coming out of these 10 tribes. And the richness of the Catholic Church, and, that's... But the whore that sits on the beast has got to be the 10 tribes, not the 2 tribes, I don't think. But let's keep reading through this and see where it goes, because I think we get to something here in chapter 18 as well. And the angel said to me, "Why do you wonder? I'll tell you the mystery of the woman and of the wild beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The wild beast you saw was and is not, and is ready to come up from the bottomless pit and go to be destroyed. And those who dwell on earth, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, shall wonder when they behold the beast that was and is not, and now whose end has come. Here is understanding for him who has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7, not hills really, in the sense of geographical places, but mountains, establishments on which the woman sits. And there are 7 kings, of whom 5 have fallen, and 1 is, and the other has not yet come, and when he comes he shall continue only a short time. And the wild beast that was and no longer is, even he is the 8th, and is one of the 7 destined to be destroyed." So before that gets too confusing, my vision of that is that what Scott taught us, I think, is still the best explanation I've ever heard. The 7 hills, the 7 kings, Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Grecia, Rome, 5 that have come and gone. Right? Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Grecia, 5 that have come and gone. Rome, 1 that is, and 1 that is yet to come. Muslim Empire, which will continue for a short space. Which it did. It got broken up into all these nation states by England pretty quick. Then a couple of 100 years, they're in there destroying all that. So that all fits too well. I've never heard anything better, and I can't see that doesn't fit. These are all the nations that the Jews have been involved with, where they have prostituted themselves. Remember how often these things are referred to as whores, and their whoredom and their prostitution. And the wild beast that was and no longer is, the state of Israel, the Jewish temple that was and no longer is, even he is the 8th and is one of the 7. Right? Because this is what this new king speaking the great things, we're all one. When he stops the sacrifice in the temple and says, we're the same. Right? That's what it says to me. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have yet to who have received no kingdom as yet. See, this isn't kingdoms in John's day. Because in John's day, you still got Rome on that land. You don't have Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Egypt, Libya. I mean, you don't have these people on that land. You have Rome. But receive authority as kings for 1 hour with the state of Israel. These are of one accord, and they shall give their strength and authority to the state of Israel. They will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will conquer them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Then he said to me, the waters which you saw where the harlot sits are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues, and the 10 horns and the wild beast which you saw shall hate the harlot, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. Now this is where I see your World War III Armageddon right here. For God's put it into their hearts to do his will, and to be of one accord, and to give their kingdom to the wild beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. Now, what are we saying here? The wild beast state of Israel, and these 10 Arab kings are saying, yeah, let's take it from the harlot. Let's take it from Western Europe. Let's take it from the United States. Let's go to war with these people. Let's make an alliance with Russia, perhaps, and China. See, I don't know, but, you know, World War III doesn't just come out of nothing. And I say when we look at all this, it comes out of what happens with Jerusalem being conquered. That's where it all happens. And this going on right here, these 10 horns given their authority to the beast for an hour. This is one side of World War III, or one portion, one large faction of World War III being described. For God's put it into their hearts to do his will and to be of one accord, and give their kingdom to the wild beast until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And what are the words of God being fulfilled? That he will punish those Jews who say they're Jews or not, and drive them out of there and bring them back himself into that land and establish them, and they will serve him. So he's using this other, the half-brother, his other child, and the 10 tribes, the beasts they've become, the whores and the beasts that they've become, to fulfill his mission for them. And the woman whom you saw is that great city which has dominion over the kings of the earth. Now that's a great clue in our day. When you look back at least the last 100 years, if it's referring to the end times, huh, Dad? Who else has had dominion over the kings of the earth but this Jerusalem? Everybody supports them but these few people that we're at war with now today. Right? Libya, Iran, Syria, just a few kings over there, a few Shiite Muslims that just wouldn't fall into line and give up all that territory to the Zionistic agenda, as they've terrorized and increased that land some however many hundredfold since they came there and said, no, we mean peace. We just want this little area to reestablish our nation. Okay, so chapter 18, after these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted by his glory. See, after these things, after what things? Right? After all these things, after the 16th chapter of every island fleeing away? I don't think so. I think after the condemnation of this whore, after the fall of Jerusalem, basically. That's what's being described here, the fall of Jerusalem. After these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lighted by his glory. And he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babylon, the great is fallen. I'm going to say Jerusalem, the great is fallen, and has become a habitation of those possessed with devils, and the shelter of every foul spirit, and the shelter of every unclean and detestable bird, and the shelter of every unclean and loathsome wild beast. See, that's as opposed to what God said it would be. Because all nations have drunk of the wine of her wrath, and the kings of the earth have committed adultery with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the power of her trade. Now see, who else is there except the trade that's gone on over the oil and over the establishment of Palestine from 100 years ago? What else draws all the kings of the earth into this, right? Even China, even Japan, even North Korea. They're all dependent on the oil. They're all part of this little piece of land over there in the world. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, O my people, so that you may not become partakers of her sins, unless you be smitten by her plagues." Where's he talking about? Turkey? America? Come out of her, my people? Is this for Christians? Come on. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, "Come out of her, my people, so that you may not become partakers of her sins, unless you be smitten by her." But what are her sins and smitten by her plagues, Dad? What? Counting on this other, what, Messiah, ruler, prince, to take care of them. The city's being fallen. He's telling them, don't stick with that. Get out of her. The plagues are coming. See, the plagues haven't hit by here again. We're looking back at when the city's fallen. And it just shows you the city falls before these final plagues. For her sins have reached up to heaven, and God has remembered her iniquities, her sins, her iniquities. Right? Who are we talking about here? Babylon over in Persia? No way. Jerusalem, who left her maker. Reward her even as she has rewarded you, and return to her a double portion according to her works. In the cup which she has mixed for her double. For as much as she has glorified herself and lived deliciously, give her so much torment and sorrow. For she says in her heart, I sit as a queen, and I am no widow. I am no widow. Isn't that a funny way? Who else qualifies there when God said, I divorce you? You're not my people. You're out of Jerusalem. Your temple's gone. It's taken away. You'll never occupy that mount again until I bring you back. But she's saying, I'm no widow. I got the mountain back. It's mine. I sit as a queen. Do you see how all the kings of the earth do what I tell them? No widow, and she'll see no sorrow. Remember her sudden destruction. She says peace and safety, and sudden destruction comes on her. Like a thief in the night. Therefore her plague shall come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be burned with fire. For mighty is the Lord God who judges her. Gotta be Jerusalem to me. And the kings of the earth who committed adultery and lived deliciously with her will weep and mourn and wail over her when they see the smoke of her burning, standing afar off for the fear of her torment, saying, Woe, woe, that great city, Jerusalem, that mighty city, for in 1 hour you have been condemned. Who else qualifies, Dad? And the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buys their merchandise anymore. Never again will there be cargoes of gold and silver and precious stones and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet, and every kind of aromatic wood, and all manner of vessels of ivory, and all manner of vessels of most precious wood, and of brass and iron and marble, and cinnamon and perfumes and spices and myrrh and frankincense and wine and oil and fine flour and wheat and cattle and sheep and horses and chariots and hides and slaves. And the fruits which your soul, and where were all those things? Where have all those, is that stuff America claims as a sort of a bounteous history, a bountiful history? No, but it would suit to describe Jerusalem, wouldn't it? And the fruits which your soul lusted after are departed from you, and all things which were luxurious and goodly are lost to you, and you shall never find them any more at all. The merchants of these things who were made rich by her shall stand afar off for the fear of her torment, and they shall weep and wail, saying, Woe, woe, that great city, which was clothed with fine linen and purple and scarlet, inlaid with gold and precious stones and pearls, for in 1 hour these great riches are destroyed. And every shipmaster and all travelers in ships and sailors and all those who labor at sea stood afar off and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like to this great city? Which means the seas haven't turned to blood and all the ships destroyed yet, I guess, right? There's another clue. that Jerusalem's been destroyed before these final plagues that lead to Armageddon, if that's the way we were reading the 16th chapter, right? And they threw dust on their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Woe, woe, that great city where all who had ships on the sea were made rich by reason of her preciousness. For in 1 hour she's destroyed. Rejoice over her, O heavens and angels, apostles and prophets, for God has avenged you on her. Again, interesting if we're talking about anywhere else on the earth but Jerusalem. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, So shall the great city Babylon be overthrown with violence, and shall be found no more at all. Which is, I say, this state of Israel, this synagogue of Satan. And the sound of harpers and musicians and singers and trumpeters shall not be heard in you again, and no craftsman of whatever craft shall be found any more in you. And the light of a lamp shall shine no more at all in you. And the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in you. For your merchants were the great men of the earth. For by your sorceries were all peoples deceived. Another clue. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all who were slain upon the earth. Of all. So again, there's not too many people that qualify, but the city of Jerusalem does qualify. And so I'm going to propose that that's the case, and we'll maybe expand on that more next week, depending on if we get any comments, if anyone's got anything to share. And I'm hoping there's some more people that have been thinking about this week. Now, the last thing I want to do today, that was the end of what we call the 18th chapter, so we'll start next week with the 19th chapter, because I want to just talk for a moment about this chronology so that people can think about this, and maybe even we can get a discussion going on it, because I find this the most interesting thing that our study of eschatology leads to. And when we do a Bible study now of Revelation, it of course intersects and that eschatological view. We're not just talking about basic Christianity here. Now we're delving into the things that are going to be hereafter. And so, what are we looking for? So I'm just going to give you my view to end this week, and hopefully we'll get some response. So the way I'm seeing it now is that the first seal spoken of, in fact the first 4 seals, as I've said, of Revelation, give us an entire picture of the way the end time period's going to go. It's going to start with a righteous warrior, and I'm more and more inclined to say warrior rather than peace, except that Daniel says through peace he'll destroy many. So peace will be the words, just like they are today. Peace process, peace in the Middle East, peace with Israel, peace with the Palestinians, roadmap to peace. So it'll all be peace, 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 peace. We're making peace with our brother Israel. And so I agree with Brother Dave on his synopsis and analysis that, the little horn will make what we call peace, but it won't be peace. It will sound like peace, but meanwhile, he'll be out killing people. That's what the first seal of Revelation's meant to tell us, that though he's a white, righteous-looking warrior who's given a crown, he goes forth conquering and to conquer, and in his train is not peace, but war and death and famine, or war and famine and death. Now, I believe that first seal has to be broken, or it only makes sense to me that first seal is broken. Perhaps all 4 of those seals that we call the 4 horsemen happen before the 7-year covenant. If not before it, they have to be. Because here's my question, Dad. How is this great thing spoken in this peace covenant made by what we call today as the little king of Jordan? he says, okay, I'm going to let the Jews rebuild their temple. I'm going to make a 7-year covenant with them. What does that qualify then? I suppose after Syria is uprooted, it sort of meets the requirement of the scriptures that 3 will be uprooted to make way for him. But how about getting from there to standing in their temple and declaring himself God? What about the rise of this? What kind of position's he in to offer security to anybody, to go forth conquering, to receive a crown of honor, to possibly preside over a group of 10 kings that give allegiance to him? How's that happen from where he is right now? So I say, let's imagine, I'm going to give you my imagination. Right now, I found out that the Saudis got 350,000 Sunni confederates from all these different countries, including Jordan, training together in Saudi Arabia to go uproot Syria. Because I say that's what's going on right now, not World War III. And when that is accomplished, somehow that has to result in the nomination and rise of the King of Jordan as the Caliph that makes sense in the region to bring stability, because Syria has fallen, and now there is 97 factions of Sunni pretenders to the throne. I think that's what's being done on purpose, see, so that the Hashemite king can be the natural selection. Because now what do? Syria's fallen. The whole place is threatened by extremist takeover in Libya, extremist Muslim Brotherhood or ISIS takeover in Egypt and in Ethiopia and other places of Africa. You have all these potential for extremists in Iraq, in Syria now, in Lebanon. All these people that are hostile to Israel, hostile to American interests, hostile to Western European interests. And so, who are you going to back after Syria falls, Dad? See, I think that's why they're making that play this way. So that once Syria falls, what can be brought out is, geez, who have we got now? We got 97 different factions, and one of them happens to be the Hashemite king, who really has a reasonable claim on that title of Caliph. And so anyway, what if that were to result in him being given the crown of Caliph, and he goes forth now to stomp out all the people that, like these other 96 factions that might not fall in line, and these other radicals that say, no way are we giving our allegiance to him. That's obviously got to happen when you pick one of the 97. So there's your go forth conquering to conquer. There's your mighty but not by his own might that we find in Daniel, right? This little horn that waxes great but not by his own might. See, because he's backed by Western Europe now. He's backed by France, America, England. And he's the one that goes forth conquering to conquer. Now, once he gets this crown and as he's conquering the enemies, now he's in a position to make this covenant, right? He's the guy that's been declared Caliph. And everybody meaningful in the sense of in Western interests has fallen in behind that. The governments are falling in behind that, and he's out there defeating the dissidents that don't want to support the governments that are falling in behind that in Egypt, in eventually Saudi Arabia, I'll get to in a second. Now, because of that, he's in position to make this 7-year covenant. And when he does, because now I'm saying he's already been given this crown, which I'm going to say has got to be the Caliph crown. That's what Revelation's pointing us to. This righteous warrior that's going to rise and be given a crown. He's going to be given the crown of Caliph. He's going to go forth conquering and to conquer, and it's going to result in a 7-year deal of security with Israel. Because, hey, I love Israel, he's going to say. He's my brother. Of course he can. Let's rebuild that temple right next to mine. Let's be brothers. That's the great thing he can say now as the Caliph, that he can't. that doesn't come off so great as just the little king of Jordan, which is why I don't see how he can make the covenant and then rise up as this caliph, but that is possible. So I'm keeping that open. So what I'm saying, though, is the first thing we're going to see is the 7-year covenant to rebuild the temple. And they're going to start rebuilding the temple, and the 2 witnesses are going to be the witnesses against that. They're going to be bringing plagues on Israel to tell them stop building this temple and not letting it rain on their crops and causing all sorts of trouble. That's what it says. For 3.5 years to trouble them to rebuild this temple. That's why when they're killed finally as terrorists, everybody's going to celebrate. And they're going to be able to start the sacrifices. And they must start them because the way Daniel says is he stops the daily sacrifice. He doesn't prohibit it from starting, he stops it. So they must start up their daily sacrifice, which is what I say is that the reason they are this beast and how God is so upset with them. He sent them their Messiah. He sent them Moses. He sent them David. He sent them all their prophets, and they killed them. And he finally sent them John the Baptist to announce to them, your Messiah is here. And the Messiah to work miracles among them. And then the Messiah's disciples afterward to confirm that God raised their Messiah from the dead. This is the Lamb. This is the one. And now they're going to build the temple again and start daily sacrifice? That's why the wrath of God comes. That's the day, that's what's bringing all this on. So for my money, 7-year covenant, rebuild the temple. Plagues by the 2 witnesses. This might even be the time when the Mahdi rises, the righteous ruler of Islam that comes out of probably Pakistan or Yemen or something like that, and will go to Medina or Mecca. Now, what I've learned from that video I encourage people to watch on last Sunday's show, there was a video someone made of Sheikh Imran Hossein's lectures, which I thought was very good, gave me the indication that I hadn't heard, that what one of their hadith says is that when sorry, let me find it here quickly because I've made a lot of notes the last week. That when Jerusalem is rising and flourishing, Medina will be in ruins. See, that's at this time now when Jerusalem's rebuilding their temple, right? They've made a deal with the caliph. The guns are flowing over there into this new deal to make it secure. They're saying, peace and safety, we've done it, right? When Jerusalem's rising, Medina will be in ruins. See, because it's one of the places we've always been anticipating the false prophet, the caliph, now is going to go take back Medina that they took from him back when they gave the Saudi kingdom their power to fight with the Hashemite king and divide up their holy places. So in one of their hadiths it says, when Jerusalem's flourishing and rising, Medina will be in ruins. It will be at the time that Medina's in its ruined state that the Great War comes, meaning Armageddon. At the outbreak of the Great War will be the conquest of Constantinople. And it'll be at the conquest of Constantinople when the false Messiah comes forth. So that's the way one of the hadiths lays out the chronology. And so I'm just sort of been looking at fitting that into my own, or how it fits into our Christian eschatology. So I'm going to say 7-year covenant, rebuild the temple. 2 witnesses are preaching against that so strongly that they're called terrorists. The world hates them. It's the rise of the Mahdi, so I'm not even so sure one of the 2 witnesses isn't the actual Mahdi. That's what made me think that. They're bringing down plagues. They're killed. Everybody celebrates. This is at the point, I think, if there is such a thing as a rapture, it has to happen here at the midpoint of the tribulation. I don't see how we justify a pre-tribulation rapture from that one saying in Paul that what withholds that man of sin will be revealed at his time. Well, obviously, while they're rebuilding the temple, they're not seeing no man of sin. So it's not till the midpoint of the tribulation that the wrath of God is poured out. So possibly here I see Jonah's 40-day warning, the dead rising. Now you've got because now's the warning. That's it. God's about to judge you. This guy's going to turn on you. This is your last chance. You got 40 days. Now's when the covenant's broken and they stop the daily sacrifice. Now the 144,000 are sealed before the disasters begin. Remember, hold back the winds. Don't let anything happen yet till we seal the servants of God. Okay, now, boom. Let's see those trumpet judgments that we've been told about, right? So now that's what I see. The trumpet judgments are coming now in that first half of the second half of the 3.5 years. And that's when it's at that time that the Jews are starting to be handed over for Jesus, because now this guy's come in and stopped their daily sacrifice and said, okay, that's it. I'm God. We're together. Don't you see the new image we've set up? This is what's going on now. I'm the Messiah. I raised those 2 witnesses from the dead, perhaps, is what I would think you're going to hear. Remember, he would fool the very elect if it were possible. He's going to be working miracles, it says. Put some flesh and blood on this story. I'm the Messiah. That's the way the Islamic eschatology sees it. He comes in and declares, stop this stupid sacrifice. I'm here. I'm your Messiah. We're done with the daily sacrifice. I raised those 2 guys from the dead. And now you stop with this Jesus. I'm the Messiah, not Jesus. So that gets you handed over for the people that have been saying Jesus is the Messiah, or the warning from Jonah that results in that, the 40-day warning. Now, at this time, he's out conquering Egypt, Saudi Arabia. That's why Medina's in ruins while Israel's on the rise. Well, Jerusalem is flourishing. He's seeking to change times and seasons. The whole world's worshiping an image that they've set up in the temple. Jerusalem's on the rise. Jerusalem's flourishing. They're in the temple. They're just worshiping now the abomination in the temple, not the daily sacrifice, but they're in the temple that they've built. And I say that's at this time that Constantinople, Medina's in ruins, Jerusalem, but now Jerusalem falls, because now's when, while they're saying peace and safety, sudden destruction comes on them. And he tells them, now you worship this image. Now you're going to take my mark, this mark of whatever it is, State of Israel, new world order mark, because I'm your Messiah. This is what we're doing now. However that works out. Now is when the mark comes. But he's already been able to conquer Medina. It's in ruins. And now he's able to conquer the Jews and Constantinople. I don't know which first, but obviously that's what happens. All this is what's going on now, and the image being brought to life. And now the sealing begins. And the sealing, this is what results in these last 7 plagues, as we've seen the last couple of weeks, right? After the angel flies through the air and says, anybody left takes a seal now. Smoke of your torment will never rise. Blessed are those, right? So now we got the last 7 plagues. And part of those is what leads to the river Euphrates drying up, the king of the east coming to fight in this great battle, which we call Armageddon, because that's what it says. I say the little horn king's got to be killed before Armageddon then. Because the way Daniel shows, he pitches his tent after he takes over Jerusalem, right? He pitches his tent between the holy mountain and the sea, which is right there by where the plain of Megiddo is. And he won't escape these kings that come after him. So sometime before, during Armageddon, the little horn king is killed, perhaps. Or perhaps now, the way the Quranic version is, that Jesus descends on the wings of 2 angels, and Jesus defeats him and supports the false Mahdi, who this false Messiah is at that moment there to go after. That's who he's left Jerusalem to go after, apparently, in their eschatological view, if I'm going to incorporate it. Anyhow, you've got this all happening now, according to Daniel and Revelation. I mean, this guy's killed. He doesn't make it. He doesn't rule the world. He gets killed. Armageddon, the kings of the earth are brought together to Armageddon, even if he gets killed after that or contemporaneously with that, at the same time with that. And then your seventh bowl, the great earthquake, and the mountains flee to their place and everyone's hiding in the rocks. That's the return of Jesus, when every eye sees him and everybody's mourning, and right? It's a terrible time as it's described in, I forget if it was Zechariah or when we've read in the past. This ain't going to be a fun time when the Lord returns. So anyway, that's my basic outline at the moment. And so I invite any questions this week about that, so we can see how we all feel, what our impression of that is. Let's keep the discussion going, see if we can learn something out of this study of the book of Revelation. So thanks for being here. You know, I haven't been speaking much about the Christianity of loving our neighbor and all that, but we're going to, I'm going to get back to that, because we're going to talk about the rapture pretty soon. Now, it looks like we're within 1 or 2 weeks from being finished with Revelation, and the very next subject's the rapture and the book of Daniel. So I'm excited about it, and hope you are. Keep loving your neighbor. Remember, that's where God's judging us. He's judging that heart of all men. And it's what we do about selflessness and loving our neighbor. That's beyond all this other understanding. That's salvation, he said. That's eternal life. The rest of this is so that we're not caught blind. We're people of the day and of the light. Remember, it says right here, when they say peace and safety, right? Behold, I come as a thief, it says in Revelation. Paul says, I tell you the truth, when they say peace and safety, sudden destruction. So it's going to look like peace and safety. They're rebuilding their temple. They've made a deal with this king who's been given a crown. That's why I think he has to be given that crown first, because that's what gives him the authority to make the 7-year covenant and for the Jews to be confident in it. Shoot, he's the caliphate. The West has given him all the guns. They're behind him. All the Arabs are getting behind him and the guns to protect his caliphate. So boom, we've got peace and safety. Now we got the guns on our side and our client Arab state side, caliph side. How can things go wrong from here? So anyway, that's what fits the prophecies the way I'm interpreting them. Thanks, Dad, for having me on the show. I'll talk to you next week. Thanks, everybody. God bless.